What if I told you that growing up without ever truly living your childhood leaves marks that are still speaking inside you as an adult? And some people have no memory of their childhood because they never really lived it. They were never allowed to be children. They were innocent, yet no one protected them. From a very young age, they were expected to be strong. Their small hands carried enormous burdens in life, in the home, in everything around them. Instead of crying, they learned to take responsibility. Instead of playing, they learned to survive. No one remembered that they were just children, and without even realizing it, they set their childhood aside. They were made to grow up. But the real question is this: what remains inside these children when they grow up? What are the inner thoughts that grew alongside them? Welcome to 5-Minute Psychology. In the next 5 minutes, you'll learn a powerful psychological idea that can change the way you think. Love psychology? Subscribe for more. Now let's continue. In psychology, this is called premature maturation. But that term does not fully carry the weight of what was lived, because premature maturation is not a talent. No one chooses it willingly. These are people who experienced moments of being forced by circumstance, forced by others. For them, it became an adaptation. The brain develops this mechanism to survive in an unsafe or chaotic environment. When threat is perceived, childhood becomes a luxury, and people are forced to give up luxuries. Those small, innocent people, these children typically grow up in specific kinds of environments. Homes where one or both parents were emotionally absent. Houses where there was no one older to share secrets with, no one to lean on. Families where economic pressure shaped daily life. Environments dominated by chronic conflict, illness, or uncertainty. Lives caught in a fateful cycle where something was always missing at home. In these conditions, a child stops being a child because to be a child, one must first feel safe. And safety never came, never existed in their world. What develops instead? Hypervigilance, a state of being constantly on edge. These children read the room the moment they walk in. From a parent's facial expression, they understand how the day has gone and how the rest of it will unfold. They sense danger from a single shift in tone of voice. It looks like heightened intuition, but it is actually a survival skill produced by a nervous system that has been under chronic stress. And this skill travels into adulthood because the brain does not forget what it has learned. It stores everything somewhere. For years, it quietly accumulates. Even when the danger is gone, the system stays on alert. In adulthood, this shows up differently, taking on excessive responsibility in relationships, being unable to say no, putting everyone else's needs before their own. These are not personality traits. These are the traces of behavioral patterns that once made survival possible. One of the greatest struggles for children who grew up too soon is this: allowing themselves to have needs, asking for help, appearing vulnerable, because in childhood these roles were forbidden to them. They had to be strong. The older sibling who looked after the younger ones, the girl who became her mother's emotional refuge, the child who held the household together in a father's absence. These roles became so deeply embedded in their identity that stepping out of them in adulthood begins to feel nearly impossible. Even if they want to, neither their mind nor their body nor their emotions will allow it. In psychology, this pattern is also described as parentification, the child taking on the role of the parent. This is not always a conscious burden. Most of the time, it happens without anyone noticing. But its impact runs deep because that child never learned that their own needs deserve to be seen. And as an adult, they feel as though no one ever will. But here is something critical. These people are not fragile. On the contrary, they have developed an extraordinary resilience, their capacity to cope with hardship, their composure in moments of crisis, their depth of empathy. All of these tend to be remarkably high. Life trained them early, but that training was never their choice. And even though they may be very strong now, the sacrifices made to arrive at that strength stand like an entire mountain behind them. And that is exactly why grief is necessary. For a childhood that was never lived, for games never played, for lightness never carried, for safety never felt. This grief is not weakness. It is, in fact, the very point where healing begins. To grieve for your past, for the time that passed, for the childhood you lost without pitying yourself, is the simplest and most harmless thing you can do for yourself. A person who was forced to grow up too soon can learn something in adulthood. You no longer have to survive, you can actually live. And those two things, you surviving and living, are very different from each other. Perhaps the deepest wound is this: that child is still waiting somewhere inside you to be seen, to be heard, and this time to be protected. There is no age limit to being a child. If you ever get the chance, try it.